me know if you can see my screen. Just a moment. Can you see the PDF?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Oh, actually, good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon. Okay, so in the last class, we had started with the original musical works, and I'm going to hurry up because we are lagging behind a little. So when there are doubts, you stop me and we'll discuss your doubt. So, original musical works are defined in section 2p. We had read the definition in the beginning. I'll quickly go through it again. A work consisting of music and includes any graphical notation of the work and does not include any words or action intended to be sung or spoken. So, no lyrics. It should be noted that musical works do not include lyrics. Lyrics come under the ambit of a literary work, and only the background music forms part of the musical work. Therefore, a song is a culmination of a literary and musical work. Literary, the lyrics, and musical, the background music. This has been reiterated in the case of Saragama versus Suresh Jindal. Now, in the PDF, I've put citations and footnotes in case you guys want to refer. In the case of IPRS versus Eastern Indian Motion Pictures, it was held that copyrighted music is not the soulful tune, superb syncing, or the glorious voice of a song. It is the melody or harmony reduced to print, writing, or graphic form. So, whatever the technical manner of what musicians used to write, it should be reduced to print, writing, or graphic form. So, it must be fixated again, just like any other work. Next category of literary works is original artistic work. Section 2C defines an artistic work as a painting, sculpture, drawing, which includes a diagram, map, chart, or plan, an engraving, or a photograph, whether or not any such work possesses artistic quality. So, whether or not I find a work artistic or possessing artistic quality is very different from what you might find it. So, like modern art is found to be very artistic and nice by some people, and some people think that modern art is not actually art in the true sense. But copyright does not cater to different opinions of people because that would vary from person to person. So, artistic quality is not required for a work to qualify as an artistic work. It should be a painting or a sculpture or a drawing in the technical definition. Then, a work of architecture is an artistic work. Any other work of artistic craftsmanship. So, by adding the C clause, they have made the definition very inclusive. So, the A clause says it lays down specific examples like a painting, sculpture, drawing, etc. But C makes it inclusive that anything apart from all that, which is artistic in nature, is also included. Now, the first category is an engraving. What is an engraving? Etchings, which are engraving the plate with acid or other corrosive material. Okay, so these are all technical things which are just for your understanding so that you understand the difference between engraving, sculptures, etc. You don't have to know everything from exam point of view. Then there are lithographs, which are treating parts of the surface of a stone or a metal plate, etc., with ink rejecting substances. Then there are woodcuts, which are engravings on a wood block. There are prints and other similar works. It means the art of inscribing or carving figures, etc. It's not carving, it should be carving. Carving figures, etc., on surfaces, particularly hard surfaces. So engravings, I think, is clear. Then paintings, we all know, depiction of artistic work by representation of colors on a surface. It is protected by copyright whether or not it possesses artistic quality, but it will only be protected if it is original. If it is found to be a copy of another's art, it will not be protected. It has to employ skill in painting or work and labor in the making of it. So, whatever the standard of originality we've been following, the same applies to this also. Also, a painting is not an idea but an expression, therefore, it has to be on a surface. So, an idea of a painting is not protected, obviously, because of our idea expression dichotomy. It is only when it is put on a surface that it becomes an expression. So, only when it is put on a surface will it be protected. Somebody has unmuted. Please mute yourself. Thank you. Then, in this case, the UK Copyright Act refused to protect facial makeup as an artistic work for the purpose of copyright protection. So, they did not protect facial makeup. Sculptures are defined in 2ZA. It is an art of forming representations of things or abstract designs by cutting or shaping of stones, carving wood, modeling clay, casting metal, or similar processes. See, engraving was, don't get confused between an engraving and a sculpture. So, an engraving was when you carve things or make designs on a hard surface. Sculpture is when you mold the whole surface itself. So you are making for example, a life-size statue. That's a sculpture. But when on a wooden block you are carving the picture of that statue, that is an engraving. Wooden models of plastic flying discs manufactured as toys are covered by this definition. Sorry, the spelling of covered is spoiled here. Copyright subsists in a sculpture irrespective of its artistic quality, provided it has originated from the creator. So, artistic quality is not required, it should be original. Then, a drawing consists of diagrams, maps, charts, or plan. It also includes engineering and mechanical drawings, but they should be original. The object of this provision is to grant the artist exclusive rights to copy and make for sale 3D reproductions by grant of licenses so that the skill and labor put into the making of these drawings can be rewarded. So I have made a drawing and I will have copyright over my drawing. Then I can also commercialize it even more because a drawing will not have that much of commercial value as it will have when it's converted into an actual 3D or 2D model. So then I can license it to a professional who will develop my drawing, and then I'll be able to commercialize even more. So I will license my copyright in such case. In the case of Albert, it was held that a drawing based on an earlier drawing can get copyright if it is proved that sufficient original skill and labor has been spent on it. So you can take inspiration. So for example, you are a beginner in paintings, you go to YouTube, you find some standard beginner videos on, say, sunsets, and you want to paint a sunset. So you can take inspiration from the video, but the painting that you make, see, as long as you are doing it only for yourself as a hobby, you can copy the painting also. It doesn't matter because that's a domestic use that is accepted or exempted under the copyright law. But when you start commercializing it, if you want to make multiple paintings and sell them in the market, then you cannot copy the exact painting from YouTube. Then you have to improvise or make it original. It can be a sunset painting because ideas are not protected, but you will make an original painting for the purpose of commercialization. For your own hobby, you can copy also. That is exempted. But the idea of making a drawing is not protected, but only its expression. So if A is making a drawing on the instructions of B, then A is eligible for copyright as he is the one expressing it. B just has the idea, which is not protected under copyright law. So if somebody is instructing and the other is making, the person who's making will have copyright because he's the one who's putting the idea into expression. Because ideas are not protected, the instructor will not have any copyright unless he has already made a painting of his idea and he's instructing somebody to make it. As long as it's an abstract idea only in his mind, he will not own any rights. Then photographs are also considered to be artistic works. See, before the amendment to the copyright law, photographs were separate works. It was after an amendment that they were included under artistic works because the photographer was given the, you can say, the status of an artist. Because photography is an art and it takes a lot of effort and it takes a lot of creativity to click amazing pictures. So it was recognized as an artistic work after the amendment. A photograph includes photolithograph and any work produced by any process analogous to photography but does not include any part of a film. So you cannot take picture of a film scene and then say that this is my work because that is under the copyright of the film. So like when people post stories of when they're watching a movie in the theater or on their laptops and you post stories on Instagram or something, so you are kind of infringing the copyright in the film. but nobody cares because it's domestic. So yeah. Films are specially excluded from this definition because they have a separate copyright and are governed by different rules. The photograph has to be original. Where a photograph has been taken of a public place, now read this carefully. Where a photograph has been taken of a public place, any person can take a photograph of it, even from the same angle. But if the photographer has spent a lot of intellect, creativity, and skill into arranging the lighting, groupings, etc., and someone consciously copies everything to arrive at a substantially similar result, it may amount to infringement. Now, the amount of subjectivity in especially photographs is very high. So, as you can see now there are certain monuments which only look good from a certain angle. Now, a photographer or many photographers would obviously want to take a picture from that particular angle, which gives the best view. It doesn't mean that they are infringing each other's copyright because it's a monument which is in public domain. But as it's written here, if one photographer is doing something different or peculiar by putting his creativity into taking a perfect picture and photograph, and somebody else copies his technique also and arrives at the substantially same result, then it can be a copyright infringement. Otherwise, they all are allowed to take pictures from same angles, but they have to make the photographs original in their own sense. Now, this is very subjective. It will totally depend upon the case when we have two photographs and we have to judge whether one is an infringement of the other. The next is work of architecture. It means any building or structure having as artistic character or design, having an artistic character or design. I'm sorry, there are a lot of spelling mistakes because I had created this PDF in a lot of hurry. Or any model for such building or structure. According to section 13(5) of the Act, we'll do section 13 later. Copyright shall subsist only in the artistic character and design and not extend to processes or methods of construction. So, copyright only protects the design of the architectural work. It does not include how it was made or the processes or methods of construction that were put into it. That will go under the patent law. The work must be located in India for protection unless it is covered under section 40 and 41, which deal with foreign works. So the architectural work must be located in the territory of India. Then our last clause was work of artistic craftsmanship. It was held in this case that the primary purpose of granting copyright protection to this work is to protect and award the man who puts on the market articles that are the result of artistic craftsmanship, a product of his own handicraft, either by hand or machine or otherwise. The term artistic craftsmanship has not been defined under the Act, so there is no section for it. Now the category of literary works is complete. Now we have a totally different work called cinematograph films, basically the movies. It is defined in section 2F. Now the definition and the section number of this is important, so you have to remember. It means any work of visual recording on any medium produced through a process from which a moving image may be produced by any means and includes a sound recording accompanying such visual recording, and cinematograph shall be construed as including any work produced by any process analogous to cinematography, including video films. Basically, they have just put it in a very technical language as to what we see on our screens. Films, sorry, films being a culmination of various works like script, the lyrics and the dialogues are literary works, the background music are musical works, the scenic arrangements, choreographies are dramatic works, and the paintings, sculptures, engravings, etc., which are used in the background are artistic works, are derivative works and need not be original to qualify for copyright protection. See, the film need not be original, total film, because all these A, B, C, D are when we use them, then the result, the film that we are creating, is not original in its true sense because it's using somebody else's works. But the copyright of this as a whole vests with the producer of the film. There can be situations where, for example, the lyricist is retaining his copyright, but it's very unusual. Mostly the producer has all the copyright. He pays royalties to all the artists that are involved in the making of the film. However, if a film is found to be a substantial copy of another film, there will be no copyright in the subsequent film. By default, the copyright in all these works vests with the producer of the film, but it is also possible that there are separate copyrights. The final work are sound recordings. It means a recording of sounds from which such sounds may be produced, regardless of the medium on which such recording is the method by which. Sorry, I think I've written something wrong here. Anyway, so you refer to the Bare Act for section 2XX and you can see the definition properly. It basically means that you have a recording which embodies the sound that we are talking about, and such sound recordings also the rights vest with the producer of the sound recording. Now it basically means something like I could recite a poem and I could record it. It becomes my sound recording. I could it could be a dubbing recording. So all the animated films have dubbing artists behind them. So the dubbing that is done, the recording of it is called a sound recording. So a song is not a sound recording. Please remember, a song is a totally different work. This definition was amended in 1994. Before that, only the term recording was present. The reason for substituting the term with sound recording is that the former term had become outdated and the latter is larger in scope. So earlier only recording was used, and after the amendment, the term sound recording was inserted. Section 13, Clause 3 of the Act says that copyright shall not subsist in any sound recording made in respect of a literary, dramatic, or musical work if in the making of the sound recording, copyright in any such work has been infringed. So you have to legally take permission from the owners of the works, literary, dramatic, and musical works. If you are infringing their copyright, the sound recording made out of them will also be an infringement, and it will not be, the owner will not get any rights. In this case, it was held that the underlying literary and musical works do not lose their existence upon a film or a sound recording being made in their respect. They remain separate works. So, see, as we can say that today a lot of remixes are being made of old songs. Now, some of those old songs were separate albums, but some of the songs were parts of movies or like movies or TV show or serial, etc. Now, because just because the song was used in a movie, it does not mean that it loses its existence. It still is a separate musical work, okay? And that work has separate rights also. So it is not necessary that only the producer was owning rights. It could be possible that the music composer or the lyricist retain their copyright. So it is very much possible that the composers of those songs, but not the producer of the movie, can come up and say that the present remix, they did not take my permission and they are infringing our copyright. So it is not necessary that the works will lose their existence. They could also be separate works. Now we end subject matter of copyright here. Is there any doubt in whatever we've done till now? Please ask me. Otherwise, I'll move on to the next topic.
Ma'am, will you be uploading this PDF today?
Yes, I will. I'll upload
Thank
it
you.
after the class. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So our next topic is authorship and ownership of copyright. It is given in section 17. I would suggest if you have Bare Acts, please open section 17 and you can mark things in the Bare Act itself. This section is very important. The concepts of authorship and ownership of copyright are vital when the question of proprietary rights over the work arises. So now we've done on what works we can get copyright and what kinds of things that we create we can protect under the copyright law. Now we see when a person becomes an author, when a person becomes the owner, and what are the conditions of ownership. So it's not necessary that who creates is the owner. How, when can they be different people? So I had briefly talked about this in the starting classes, but now we'll get into the detailing of it. The Copyright Law of India does not recognize copyright on ideas. The originator of the idea is therefore not the owner of copyright, but that person who gives the concrete form to the idea. In Donogh versus Allied newspapers, it was held that since there is no copyright in ideas, even if they are original, the originator of a brilliant idea is not the owner of the copyright unless he is also the creator of the work. Now, this is a very important case in this respect, so please take note of this. Section 17 of the Act states that an author is the first owner of copyright. So the first line of the section says that the author is the first owner of copyright. This is our general rule. By default, who creates the work is the first owner of copyright. Who is an author? An author has been defined in section 2D. For example, the author of a newspaper report is the person who writes the report and not the person supplying the news. A journalist who writes the news story on the life of another is the author of the story. So whoever's writing the work, originally he is the owner of copyright. Now this is a general rule. Now we do what are the exceptions to this general rule when who's making the work is not the owner. After a perusal of the section of author, we can infer that whoever creates the work is the author. Registration is not a prerequisite for subsistence of copyright. This I told you guys before that copyright is an automatic right. Section 2D does not talk about registration as a mandate for copyright authorship. This means that a creator of the work is its author even without registration. In Ramesh Sippy versus Shan Ranjit Uttam Singh, it was held that authorship of the work is to be determined when the work comes into existence. Because before that, it will be just an idea. Now, what questions do we ask when we talk about authorship and ownership? Whether author is also the owner of copyright? Can authorship and ownership vest in the same person? Can authorship and ownership vest in different persons? Section 17 of the Act states that the author of the work is the first owner of copyright, what we did in the previous slide. This is, however, subject to certain exceptions, cases where the author and owner can be different people. Now, this is important, so read carefully. The first category of works that we talk about are literary, dramatic, and artistic works. Now, keep note of the title that here musical works are not included. So we only talk about 3 categories here in 17A. Now we'll read slowly and try to understand the section. This is the section. In the case of a literary, dramatic, or artistic work made by the author in the course of his employment, so the author is an employee of the proprietor of a newspaper, magazine, or similar periodical under a contract of service or apprenticeship. So we are talking about a person who has been employed by, say, we'll just take the example of a newspaper, who's been employed by a newspaper and who has created a literary, dramatic, or artistic work in the course of his employment for the purpose of publication in such newspaper, and said proprietor shall, in the absence of any agreement to the contrary, be the first owner of copyright. See, by default, if we go according to the general rule, the person who creates the work is the first owner. So by default, according to the general rule, the person who's creating the see, we had discussed the example of creating cartoons for a newspaper. So let's take that example. So artistic work for a newspaper. So originally, the artist must be the first owner of copyright because our definition says so, that whoever creates the work is the first owner of copyright. But we are dealing with exceptions here. So why the artist is not the first owner of copyright is because he is employed by the proprietor of the newspaper for creating cartoons to be published in the newspaper, not for his personal work, not for the personal work of the artist. So he's being paid money to create cartoons for the newspaper only. So he becomes an employee. In such a case, he will not own copyright on the cartoons. The copyright in the cartoons will vest with the newspaper. The you can say the essence of this or the effect of this will be that when the term of employment of the artist ends, he cannot create the same cartoons for another newspaper. The whole purpose of vesting the copyright with the newspaper is that the cartoons only be associated with that particular newspaper and don't reach the competition. Is this clear? Did you guys understand? So for literary, dramatic, and artistic works, the proprietor of the newspaper or magazine will be the owner of copyright. In B.T. Thomas versus Malayalam Manorama, we have written this case before also. It was held that in the case of termination of employment, the employee is entitled to ownership of copyright in the works created subsequently. Subsequently meaning after the employment has ended. And the former employee has no copyright over the subsequent works. Now, this is very obvious also, but still this was held in the case that after the artist is no longer the employee of the newspaper, the cartoons that he creates after that, the work that he creates after that is his own copyrighted work. Basically, copyright in the work created by the employee on his own time and not during the course of employment belongs to the creator and not the employer. So after the employment ends, we go back to our general rule that who creates the work is the first owner of copyright. So our exception only goes to the extent of the term of employment. Now, if this is clear, I will move on to the next category of work. Are there doubts? Okay. Barring some exceptions, the author of a literary, musical, or dramatic work is the first owner of copyright. Here, an author is literary or dramatic work, the author of the work, and musical work, the composer. Composer is defined to mean the person who composes the music, regardless of whether it is in the form of graphical notation. In relation to a literary, musical, or dramatic work, which is computer generated, the author is the person who causes the work to be created. Now we have a concept called a joint ownership. What if there are two people who are co-authors of a book? What if there are two producers of a movie? Or what if there has been uh, there are two music composers. So we know there are a lot of musical pairs that are there in the film industry. So Salman, Suleiman, I think are two brothers who compose music together. So they are joint owners of copyright. Now, what is the concept of joint ownership? Let's read that. Section 2Z defines joint ownership. The work of a joint ownership means a work created by collaboration of two or more authors in which the contribution of one author is not distinct from the contribution of other authors. See, we are not talking about like you can say there are short stories. So there is one book which has different chapters written by different people. We are not talking about that. That is not an example of joint ownership. So the whole book is not owned by all authors collectively. They have separate copyrights on their separate stories. That is when the contribution of each author is very distinct from each other. In joint ownership, we talk about such works wherein the work is so intermingled that we cannot differentiate which till which extent the first author has worked, till which extent the other has worked. So if we take the example of Salman Suleiman or Salim Suleiman, I'm not sure of the name. So that pair creates music for films. Now we cannot differentiate or distinguish as to what work Salim has done or what work Suleiman has done. It's all mixed. So that is the work of joint ownership. Basically, the contribution of all authors is inseparable. Joint authors of the work are joint owners of copyright. It shall be noted that there is one copyright in the work which is collectively owned by all authors and not separate copyrights. So there is only one copyright. So they collectively own the copyright. They don't have separate copyrights. Is it clear? I'm not getting any responses today. Where are you guys? Are you understanding? Or is it too much for you? Do you want me to go slow?
We are getting it.
Okay, great. One of the joint owners cannot license or assign copyright to any other person without the permission of all the joint owners, since none of them have the complete title to the work. See, not one of them has complete title, and there is nothing like 60 40 percentage of ownership or anything. It's one copyright which is jointly owned by two or more persons. So without the permission of all the authors or owners, no person can license or assign copyright. However, each of them can maintain an action for infringement against a stranger. So if there is an infringement, then even one of the authors, without involving the others, can file a suit for infringement. Because here the question of protecting the work comes into play. Here, even if some authors are not interested in filing the suit, which is very unlikely, any one of them can file the suit in his own name. Now, in Donogh case, Donogh was a well-known jockey, communicated to a journalist about his various adventures. The journalist made notes of their conversations and then he wrote the articles on him. The manuscript was then taken to Donogh, who read it, and when he thought that some alterations were necessary, they would be noted in the margin by the journalist. So basically, the journalist was interviewing Donogh, who was a jockey, and all his adventures, experiences, the journalist was writing an article on it. Whenever the jockey thought, Donogh thought that this should be changed or something, his recommendations were written in the margin and incorporated in the article. The series of articles were then published under the name My Racing Secrets by Steve Donogh. This publication was done by the journalist. Donogh then sought an injunction on the ground of infringement of copyright. Court held Donogh basically contended that he was a joint author because he also gave suggestions and recommendations and they were included in the article. So he is a joint owner of copyright, and the journalist has published the work under only his own name, so he sought an injunction. The court held that the language in which the articles were written was the language of the journalist and not of Donogh, and thus Donogh is not the joint owner of copyright. See, in this, it doesn't even make sense to grant copyright to Donogh because he was just the subject of interview. He was not writing the article. He was not interested in publishing an article on himself. He was just asked because somebody was writing an article on him. So he's the best person to obviously give the first hand information on his experiences. It does not, from any sense, make him a joint owner. So the injunction was set aside. This is a very important case in joint ownership. Najma Heptullah versus Orient Longman. This case relates to the issue of authorship of the book India Wins Freedom. Mr. Maulana Azad used to describe his experiences to Professor Kabir. So this is also a similar situation, but read carefully, who used to make notes of the same. So Professor Kabir used to sit with Maulana Azad. It was not really an interview. They used to have conversations which were recorded, and Professor Kabir used to make notes of conversations. When sufficient material would be collected, a draft in English would be prepared by Kabir and handed over to Azad. So it was a continuous process. There were a series of articles printed on the conversation. It was not just one interview and one article published. So after some conversations, he had enough material to publish one series, he would create a manuscript and then show it to show it to Azad. Azad then read the chapter and both of them went through the draft together. It is at this stage that Azad is said to have made many amendments, additions, alterations, and omissions. Kabir's function was only to record Azad's feelings. He did not interfere with the opinions and judgments in the book, even if he did not agree with the same. So his job was only to record what Azad said or felt. He did not have any opinion on the same. He wasn't allowed to because he was just giving expression to Azad's feelings. So he could not have his own opinions interfere. The issue before the court was who was the author of the book. Kabir contended that he was the sole author of the book because Azad only gave the ideas and thoughts which were converted into expression by Kabir, and it was him who wrote the manuscript in English, relying strongly on the Donogh's case. So in the Donogh's case also, like only the journalist was granted copyright. So relying on that judgment, Kabir contended sole authorship and ownership. The court denied the reliance on the Donogh judgment. Court held that if the Donogh case was to be held as correct, it would mean that the material on the basis of which a literary book is written would be of no importance. So court expanded the arena of copyright protection and rejected the Donogh judgment as being incorrect. They said that if you totally rely on the Donogh judgment, it means that whatever material you are using to create a work, like in that case, it was the experiences of Donogh that was used to create the article, then you would totally held that to be unimportant and redundant, which we cannot do because the work relies, the foundation of the work is the material of the work, the content of the work. The court further observed that a literary work consists of material or subject matter which is expressed in a certain language and written down. Both the material and the language are equally important. So, material means the content that is provided by the by Azad in this case, and language which was provided by Kabir. So both are equally important, the content and the language. It was finally held that the legislative intent of the Copyright Act is not to only give importance to the person in whose language the book is written in. So, not only Kabir is to be given importance, while completely ignoring the person who contributed the entire material which enabled the writer to complete the book. So, we cannot negate totally the contribution of Azad. Therefore, it was held that both Kabir and Azad were joint owners of copyright in the book. Now, the Donok judgment completely said something different, and the Indian court completely held something different, denying the correctness of the Donok judgment. Now, I want to know what you guys think. Which judgment do you agree with? Because this is a discussion which is very controversial. It was very controversial when I was doing my masters, and everybody had opposing views. So you tell me, which judgment do you agree with? I want responses, please.
Ma'am, I think the one with Kabir and Azad. Because even though it's his language, the matter is not his own.
Yeah.
So even if he's expressing it,
Hmm.
the expression also comes from the language that was used by Azad.
Right. So you agree with the Indian court judgment?
Yes.
Okay. Anyone else who has a different opinion or the same opinion? Why are you not responsive today? You always are so responsive in all classes. Is it a boring topic? Anyway, so 17B, so that ends 17A. Now we talk about 17B under a contract of service. The contract of service regulates the employer employee relationship. A person employed under a contract of service is called an employee. Both the employer and employee are under certain obligations. The employer is bound to provide work and pay to the employee, while the employee is to provide the labor. If no such reciprocation exists, there will be no contract of service. The degree of control is also an important factor to determine if there is a contract of service between parties. Degree of control of the employer on the employee, they mean. Now, contract for service. It is different from contract of service. A contract for service relates to commissioned works, that is, a work done by the author at the instance of a third party. It relates to the relationship between an author and the commissioner who pays the commission. The degree of control is relatively low. For example, let's take a very basic example that we know of. So there is a media company, entertainment company, who hires content creators for creating YouTube videos. Okay, their work is all online. It was created after the pandemic, and this is a real company I'm talking about. So I know somebody who works in such a company, so it exists. Now they have employees working under them who are hired on a monthly salary basis, and they are on the payroll of the company. They are employees. They are on a contract of service. Now the company also hires freelancers who are given particular tasks for the day, and they are paid a sum of say 5,000 per video. They are commissioned people who are paid commission for their work. They're not on any payroll. They're not given any fixed salary. If there is no video to be created for the whole week or the month, they are paid zero money. That is a contract for service. The degree of control is low in such cases. The content creators cannot be dictated to a very high extent as to what they can do and cannot do. However, an employee can be dictated as to how the work is to be done because they are on a salary basis. Author of a compilation. Now we've done this before. We've discussed a lot of times that if a person is compiling many works, or and those works could be copyrighted, but the manner of compilation is original, then the author will be the owner of copyright on the compilation. In case of a collective or composite work, like an encyclopedia, there will be distinct copyrights, namely the copyright in the entire work and the copyright in separate contributions. So, whatever works I'm compiling, if I'm compiling 3-4 different literary works, so I can take the example of short stories. So, all the short stories, the copyright in them are distinct copyrights belonging to their respective authors. I am compiling the short stories in a very different manner. For example, in a very original manner, I will have the overall copyright on the manner of compilation, not on the stories, but the way they are compiled. The person who collects and arranges the entire work will generally be the author of the work, considered as a compilation, whereas the authors of separate contributions will be the persons who wrote them. Section 17B now talks about photographs, paintings, and portraits. Okay, I'll give you a situation. You tell me who will be the owner of copyright. So there is a person who's loves his wife a lot and everything. He wants to create a life-size portrait of his wife. Now he, not being an artist, he hires a professional artist to create the painting of his wife. The artist makes the painting. Who owns the copyright over the painting here? The wife, the husband, or the artist? You tell me. Come on, you can guess.
Ma'am, the
The
wife?
husband. The husband.
Okay, the husband, and one person said the wife.
Yes.
Okay. Any other guesses? So nobody thinks that the artist could be the copyright owner? He's the one creating it, right?
Ma'am, he's creating it, but for a consideration.
Okay, don't read the slides and answer. Somebody was about to say something, I think.
No, yeah, it's gonna be the artist, ma'am, since he's the author.
Okay. Okay. See, when a person is creating the work at the instance of some other person and for a valuable consideration, the person on whose instance the work is being created is the owner, in this case the husband. See, you cannot provide see, if you leave copyright on all the legal aspects behind and you look at it like a layman, so do you think it's reasonable to give copyright to a random person of your own painting? Like, your portrait is owned by somebody else, he can do anything with it, it's not even safe. So even if you see from a normal logical perspective, it doesn't make sense. So the husband will be the owner of copyright because on his instance the portrait is being created and he's paying to the artist, so it's for a valuable consideration. Similarly, see, a lot of photographers are hired and videographers are hired for capturing the weddings, right? So it doesn't mean that that photographer has copyright over your wedding pictures. Obviously, the couple will have copyright because at their instance, they have hired the photographer, they are paying a valuable consideration to them, and so they are the owners of copyright. Otherwise, giving random photographers the rights on your pictures doesn't make sense again. Okay. So when a photograph or a painting, just look at the bullet points. Whenever a photograph is taken, painting or portrait is drawn, or engraving or film is made for a valuable consideration at the instance of a third person, the third person is the owner of copyright. Basically, who's paying money is the owner of copyright. Is it clear? The wife has no role to play. She is just the subject of the painting. She did not ask the painter to make a painting, right? So she is in nowhere related to the ownership. The question was only between the artist and the husband is the owner. Are there any doubts? Okay, now we'll do this in the next class. Uh, Time is up. So we'll continue with this, and I hope it's clear. Everything is clear. Are there doubts?
Yeah,
Excuse me,
I
ma'am.
mean there are certain things.
Yeah, tell me.
Okay, so should I
Yeah, tell
continue?
me. Yeah.
No, ma'am. Since we're running short on time, if you could contact through which I had a few more doubts that I could clarify. Is it possible?
Yeah, sure. So, how do you want to go about it?
Yeah, if you could share your number, we could call and clarify it.
Okay, I'll share it in the chat box.
Okay.
Okay. Are there other doubts? Who wants to ask right now?
Ma'am, can you please explain once again why the husband would get the ownership?
See, the husband will get ownership because he has hired a painter to create a painting of his wife. He has paid a valuable consideration to the painter to create the painting. And uh, when a work is created at the instance of a person, here at the instance of the husband, such person is the owner of copyright. So you can also take the example of the wedding. So I just explained that how couples, they hire photographers and videographers for their weddings to capture their weddings. So it is not so that the photographer is given copyright over your wedding pictures. You will have the copyright because at your instance, you have hired the photographer, you have given them a valuable consideration, and at your request, they are capturing the pictures. So when you pay them the money, their due money, their work is done. They have no role to play. Now the copyright owners of the pictures are you. See, it does not make sense also that somebody else owns rights over your personal pictures. Like, even if you think like that, it's very weird that somebody else would own rights on your pictures or your personal portraits. So the person who hires the photographer or the artist will own the copyright in the work. This is an exception to the general rule where we say that who creates the work is the owner. So we, in section 17, we are only talking about exceptions. So this is the second exception. Did you understand now?
Okay, ma'am. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Okay, guys, then we'll wind up. I'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you, ma'am.